TCI is brought to you by Northern Afleet, standing at tailor-made stallions, sire of 5 millionaires and 6 Grade 1 winners. Find out more at northernafleet.com.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Breeders' Cup. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Joel, we got a lot of races to talk about, major races concerning the Breeders' Cup. A lot of these races we are going to talk about, they're the final preps for these horses.
You know, they really are, John. And this weekend we have 3 major races for 3-year-olds on tap. And really it's the only big opportunity to run against 3-year-olds for the rest of the year for these horses. And I'm talking about the Cotillion for 3-year-old fillies, obviously the Pennsylvania Derby, and even the Gallant Bob, a race that I think will be graded and significant soon. That is a major race for 3-year-old sprinters. You have Trinity in there, so a lot of good races on tap. And obviously, as we said, you won't see these horses run in the next 6 weeks. 6 weeks away to the Breeders' Cup. That's why we're stepping up our game a little bit.
That's right, stepping it up. We got the coats back on, and we're ready to go. Joel, before we talk about these races, let's take a look back at the Woodbine Mile. Going into last weekend, we thought this race could have major implications on the Breeders' Cup Mile. Do you think it did?
Oh, boy, did it ever. And you know what? When you talk about your winner, Wise Dan, John, I don't think we're going to see him again, you know, before the Breeders' Cup. It's 7 weeks out from the Woodbine Mile. I think you'll see him next. He'll get a little rest, run next at Santa Anita in that Breeders' Cup Mile. And let me tell you something. I don't care what Europeans come over. Unless it's Frankel, this horse might be the favorite. I don't know if Coolmore's bringing Acceleration or not, but I tell you what, the way he made Cityscape look in this race, Jason, let's go to the footage, the Twin Spires TV race replay here, and we hit the play button here, and we're going to catch him on the far turn, John. This is a 1-turn mile configuration of Woodbine. Look who slips up the inside with a ton of horse here. I mean, just got a beautiful trip. But immediately, Wise Dan right here. He's finishing. Where am I looking? I'm looking at Cityscape, who's right here on his wrong lead. You know, he's a European horse. Probably not used to that 1-turn, left-handed turn configuration, but still, watch the separation here. Both horses are finishing. You see Wise Dan pulling away here in the stretch. Johnny V's really only showing him the whip, John, and he's just running away. Similar to like he did at Saratoga. This horse is just on fire right now, John. And I tell you what, he was a top handicap horse on the dirt this summer. Now Wise Dan's really found his niche, in my opinion. On the turf, he can do it on firm turf, he can do it on yielding turf like he did at Saratoga. You might be looking at your favorite in the Breeders' Cup Mile.
All right, Joel, let's talk about this weekend's races. I want to start off with the Cotillion. You know, we only get 4 fillies in here, but it is 4 good ones, including last year's 2-year-old champion, My Miss Aurelia, and of course, Questing. What can you say about her, except she's won back-to-back Grade 1s?
Well, we're talking about Breeders' Cup favorites. Why don't we just continue with Questing here, John? I mean, the way she emerged this summer in New York, I mean, here's a filly that they thought was a grass filly. They put a no-name rider on her, essentially, throw her in a dirt allowance, and boom, a superstar emerges. The speed that she shows and she's able to finish off of is just uncanny, John. There's really no filly like her in the country, in my opinion, particularly going long. She's in a zone right now, and I tell you what, what's interesting about the Cotillion, in my opinion, they're giving away $1 million. It's a Grade 1 now. It's a major, major race, but she's going to face your 2-year-old champion there. Second off a layoff, and that's My Miss Aurelia, John. She's undefeated. She has tactical speed herself, so it'll be interesting to see what do they do with My Miss Aurelia. Do they go after Questing early? And if so, what happens at that point? Mano y mano, who's best? I think it's Questing.
All right, earlier in the show you mentioned the Gallant Bob. You said this race is really gaining in importance. You think it may be graded soon. It's not this time, but we do see Trinity and Currency Swap in here.
This is a really good race, John. They've upped the purse. It's $300,000. And it's not graded yet, but trust me, this will be a graded stake soon for 3-year-olds. I think it's a major prep for the Breeders' Cup Sprint because you have Trinity in there. Now, Currency Swap's in there too. I think a local horse that's dangerous is Il Villano, likes that 6-furlong distance, certainly has a great record at Parks, but really, Trinity, if you can throw out his Woody Stevens, you know, Currency Swap didn't run well there, and it was sort of a, you know, we saw that Saratoga track get really typey and strange at times. I just really think that was too good, you know, too bad to be true. I'll say that about Trinity's performance. He has a bullet work sense. If he fires at Parks where it's tough to run down speed, I think he rebounds this Saturday.
All right, let's move now to the Pennsylvania Derby. Joel, we see the 2 horses that dead heated last time in the Travers. Of course, I'm talking about Golden Ticket and Alpha.
We're going to get another dead heat this time?
No, not this time.
You know, it's interesting because I thought Alpha was a much better horse than Golden Ticket, but the way Golden Ticket snuck up the rail on him and finished, you know, horse with more of a sprinter miler type pedigree, going 1.25 miles. Very interesting emergence for Golden Ticket. Sort of came out of nowhere for me. Be interesting to see they're sort of equal weights in here, but they're giving away a ton of weight to a full field of other 3-year-olds in here. You know, a horse like Macho is not getting as much weight, Now, he kind of looks like what Steve Asmussen had last year with Wilburn, a late developing 3-year-old that just flew under the radar and started beating good horses at the end of the year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Macho in there. He comes out of a key race, I guess, the West Virginia Derby, where he beat Hanson, and then he also beat, Bourbon Courage. Bourbon Courage flattered him by winning the Super Derby. Neither one of those races were very fast, so I do think it's between your Travers dead heat horses in here, and I give Alpha the leg up in the division.
Well, you mentioned Golden Ticket came out of nowhere. I mean, he did run second in the Tampa Bay Derby, so I mean, he was on the radar earlier in the year. That's
true, and here's a horse they've tried a lot of different things with, but really, the way he came in off of Churchill Downs allowance race, I mean, here's a horse, didn't run well at Churchill, and they were just looking for the Bernardini Stakes, a race that didn't even feel a listed race at Saratoga. They throw him into the Travers, essentially, and we thought he was just going to be a pace setter maybe for Adigun in there. Boom, he almost wins the race, and I tell you what, he opens up in the stretch. I love the courage Alpha showed to come and get him. I thought Alpha nabbed him on the wire, but certainly great performance by both of them. I'm interested to see how good Alpha is. Is he going to continue to improve? Because we know he has back class, he has hype. We've seen him slowly mature. I thought he was going to be a big threat in the Belmont Stakes before he missed that race. Now, obviously, when the Jim Dandy and the Travers show him more speed, if there's a 3-year-old, John, that can be a threat in this year's Breeders' Cup Classic, it's probably up to Alpha.
All right, Joel, it's time to tackle the topics. As you know, I caught up with Ray Pollock earlier today, and this is what he had to say about today's topic. All right, Ray, it's time to tackle the topics. Today's topic is the Thoroughbred Times. As you know, the news broke this week. You actually were the first to break it on Twitter that the Thoroughbred Times had filed Chapter 7 and no longer in business. Ray, what does this mean for the industry and also just for publishing in general?
Well, it's no secret that the publishing industry has been going through some really difficult times in recent years. Newspapers, news magazines, feature magazines are doing better, but so you've had the combination of a difficult environment for publishing, and you've had a lot of consolidation in the horse business in terms of stallion farms, consigners. There's not as much advertising out there as there used to be. So I think it's a combination of the two, along with questions about the way it was managed from the home office in Los Angeles. So I don't think there's any one thing you can point to and say this is why the Times went into bankruptcy. I think it's a multiple kind of complex situation that involves the horse industry, which has consolidated. We've had some rough years since 2008 in particular, but it's not, you can't just say, hey, the horse industry is going downhill, this is what happened. It's a combination of publishing, of the general economy, and how that's affected the horse industry as well.
Now, I know a hot topic has been, can a publication like this survive, and can an investor group maybe come in and resurrect the Thoroughbred Times? Do you think our industry can handle 2 trade publications right now?
Well, the Thoroughbred Times already gave up publishing a weekly news magazine. That happened in July. So it's really down to 1 weekly, which is the Blood Horse. But the Thoroughbred Times was more than a magazine. It went to a twice-monthly format that was more features-oriented, less news, which I think was a good idea. But they also were publishing a daily newsletter, the Thoroughbred Times Today. They were publishing buyer's guides, which a lot of horsemen use at horse sales. They had some other statistical books like the Stallion Directory. So there are bits and pieces of it, I think, that should survive and can survive, given what I see right now is kind of a general recovery in the horse industry. The sales have been very healthy out at Keeneland this past couple of weeks. And I sense that there's a little bit of optimism out there right now.
All right, well, thank you, Ray, for joining us here on Tackle the Topics today. A special thank you to Ray Pollock for coming on the show. Thank you, Joel, for your input. And thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We're going to give you a top 5 for the Ladies Classic.